You know, we all have challenges in the requirements world, like for general speaking, if you will, making sure that we have and capture clear and unambiguous requirements. You know, even getting the right subject matter experts, identifying business processes, these things can be a challenge overall. Especially if we don't have common processes or repeatable methods for doing our requirements work. So consider for just a moment, how are we going to communicate and work together in one location if we have these challenges, opposed to working in a distributed environment with these same challenges? So when teams are spread across different time zones, physical locations, and represent different cultures and languages, or even if they don't have common repeatable framework or communication models worked out ahead of time, then distributed environment problems are compounding the local problems that we would have. So starting at the bottom of this list here, let's look at a few items that we see as challenges. Different knowledge base from different courses and books, and training, if you will, or experience. In any organization, either locally, regional, or globally, we're going to have a set of requirements practitioners that have very different knowledge, skill, and ability levels, and especially in requirements. Maybe they've been through different training courses and have varying degrees of experience. However, it's difficult to verify that set of practitioners have baseline training or a baseline understanding. That is, unless you have a stringent hiring process and only hire those folks that you know have a common baseline. There's still, though, a need for a consistent knowledge base set across the organization of your requirements practitioners. So the second item here is different terminology to talk about requirements. Have you ever seen a requirements review or project team and the whole group is kind of in each other's faces, and they're having to take two. They're having to say the same things over to each other, but there's a breakdown of communication because of terminology. In any event, if you've seen this type of behavior, one of the root causes is probably linked to a requirements vocabulary or a lack of taxonomy or even a common framework. If you see arguments that are about lack of consistent templates, or have content discussions around that, then you have a good indicator that source or that root cause is not having a common agreed upon methodology. Working from around the world and having lots of information to manage, I would say that's also information and data. With the introduction of multiple time zones and languages in this follow-the-sun development world we live in, having a conversation around requirements is a challenge. It's difficult. The differences around communication styles from each of our sites, each of our regions, each of our organizations even, they will vary from region to region, site to site. So it's very important to consider how we will collaborate and how we're going to do that up front. How are we going to build trust with one another and be able to store and retrieve those conversations and those requirements that we discover along the way? When looking at internal objectives, or internal objectives vary, let's be frank here. And let's also talk about measurement data for a moment. Do you know how many approved business requirements have related feature functionality in production? Do you know the churn or mission-critical system requirements that are changing from month to month or from application to application? Do you know what even questions to ask to find out what requirements challenges you're having on your project, in your program? How about your enterprise? If not, then you have a measurement challenge. The upside to these challenges is that it's possible to be productive with distribution. With a few processes around your organization and documented procedures, these challenges can be mitigated.
Again, the point is that these are common problems to large organizations. So with that, the rest of our talk today is really going to be focused around how do you address these common challenges on global projects. I should say, if you have a PMO or a center of excellence that's focused on requirements, make sure that you work with them on how they want you to solve these challenges. But if you don't have one or you're trying to build one, then the suggestions that we give you today will help you sort of focus on the most important things about requirements capabilities. And again, these ideas are going to be completely applicable even if you're an individual trying to do this alone. We believe it takes a strong foundation to get to great requirements. Now, I'm going to briefly run through the pieces of this foundation, but we're going to go into more depth on each one of these here in a moment. So at the first layer, down at the bottom of that pyramid, this begins with a consistent skill set. This is all about training and using experts to do mentoring on your team. The next layer is about adopting a solid framework. This would be things like methodology and templates. That third layer is all about tools. These are going to be tools to gather and manage the information that you collect during the requirements efforts. Now, the pitfall that many development organizations fall into is they try to implement a tool of some sort, but they don't have those first two supporting levels of the pyramid in place. We know of a lot of companies who attempted to throw Rec Pro at it to fix their requirements problems, and instead they ended up with a bunch of install CDs and some lovely user manuals that sit on the shelf. Just remember that the tools are only as good as the foundation which they're implemented on top of. That fourth layer of the pyramid is all about measuring the outcomes of your projects, and specifically focusing your team on working towards those results. So, after all, the purpose of writing good requirements is not about having a complete specification. It's really about having a successful product or project at the end of the effort.